So, hi everyone. Welcome again to Tiny Viz Talks. Kudos to all the speakers. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to Anastasia, Emily talk, and yeah. So for me today, I'll just be presenting on something called 5 steps for creating an insights-driven Viz. But first, I'll give a bit of a background to this. So sometime last week, I had to do a case study. I had to do a case study for an interview process. So I'm currently transitioning to full-time data analyst roles. Over the past 6 months, I've basically been doing a bit of consulting on the side, working on the side projects, freelance projects. So this was actually a case study for a company, one of the 5 big tech companies in the world. For maybe anybody that's interviewed with them, this is probably something similar that you've seen. So this was the final dashboard. The case study was basically for me to do an analysis on oh, actually missing one slide. Do an analysis on New York motor vehicle collision, and then draw insights from that to be able to reduce accidents and eventually reduce deaths. So this was basically the final dashboard. And what I'm going to be doing today is to work the team through how this was created and how I got the final insights. Well, good news, I got to the final stage, so I think I did a good job with that. So basically, the first thing you have on any case study, on any business case, is basically the problem statement, right? So in this case, it was for me to find a way to reduce accidents using the data set I had, which was like the New York motor vehicle collisions data set. That's an open data set. It's available on Google BigQuery for anybody that uses that. So basically, that's the first step for anybody doing a case study, or you're giving something at work to do. Say, oh, I want to find out why we have a very high staff turnover, or why we're losing profits. You need to understand that problem statement and also have at the back of your mind who your stakeholders are, who you're going to present to eventually. The next step here is to understand the data set. So for if you're using a very like a new data set, in this case, for something I hadn't seen before, I hadn't worked with. So I basically had to understand what was in data, things like that. For everybody, I think if you're going into data viz or data analysis, you should know how to use SQL. So I had to do some SQL queries to get things like what is the total number of rows. For this particular data set, it had 1.7 million rows. So it was quite a very big data set. So next thing is to brainstorm for insights. So at the end of the day, I had to do like a 5-page slide deck. They have to brainstorm for insights. So for me, one key thing I like to do is at the beginning of the case study or any problem statement I have to work with is to start to ask myself different questions. So as a result of me asking myself some of those questions, I was able to get things like what is the total number of deaths for a particular period, and I was focused on a particular city in New York, which was Brooklyn. Things like what are the top contributing factors? So what are the things that caused the accidents most in that city? And we had things like distracted drivers, so people using their phones. We also had things like fatigue, and also people that were backing up, wrongly in terms of reversing. So the next thing is, so you start to create your Viz. At the end of the day, you want to be able to tell your users a story around your data. So for me, I like to sketch out what I want to do first. Most of the time I get inspiration from Vizes that people have done before. Sometimes I try to do something from scratch. So I try to create, I use Good Notes app on my iPad to like sketch my Viz out. So this is something I sketched for this particular work. And then I use Figma to create like my background design. I learned how to use Figma, I think last month. There was a Tableau tutorial that I looked up on YouTube that helped me to learn how to use Figma. And then what I do is I import Figma into Tableau, and voila, you have basically just dragging your sheet onto the background you've created. And that was basically it. And then next thing is to provide recommendations. So in providing recommendations, some errors people make is to use their own insights. So they use things they tend not to use the data, right? What data is told them. They tend to use what they feel or what they think should be done, which is always wrong in a case study or if you're working in any context at all. You should always use what the data is telling you, which is why I titled this insights driven Viz. So for me, this is one of the recommendations I made, trying to tell them focused on high collision areas. So I basically had short-term recommendations and long-term recommendations for these Vs. And then based on some of the things I also got from the data, making sure they focus on high collision areas, which I got in from the data set, increasing road usage signs for pedestrians, because we found out that it was pedestrians that were hurt and injured the most when these accidents occurred. So that's pretty much it for me. Thank you so much for listening. So if you have any questions, do let us know in the chat, or you can connect with me on any of the social media platforms. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. That was a really good talk and got people quite interested into that process of combining Figma and Tableau.
Okay.
So that's really quite novel. We have a question from Michelle here. How much time do you spend on data visualization?
Yeah, so I think I forgot to mention that. So I put that at the beginning of the talk, right? So for me, if I'm doing something from scratch, it probably takes me about a week. So it just depends on the time frame, right? So for this, I put that I use about 30 hours to complete it because I had little time. What else? I also had things I was juggling as well. So I just put an estimate of 30 hours. I would have to think back as how much time I spent. But here for this particular visit, it took me that amount of time. Simply because I was doing, I don't know, I would say I was doing a lot. I had 23 sheets I had to create, 5 different views, and these 5 different views had their backgrounds created in Figma. So I had basically had to do each one for these views. Yeah, so about 30 hours. So for the dashboard and the presentation as well. So I had to do a presentation that was about 5 pages. Yeah, so I put about 30 hours for this one. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I see actually now that Michelle meant data validation actually. So how much time
Okay,
you
like
actually
data
spent
cleaning.
on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so for data cleaning, I say that took much of my time. So that's when I tried to do the exploratory data viz. So for this particular one, I wouldn't say it didn't take me so much time. So let's say about 2-3 hours. Simply because the data set was it was fairly clean when I started. There were a bit of null values here and there, but there was really nothing I could do about it because, like I said, it was a public data set. So for some of the null values, I had to exclude them. But yeah, for that, it didn't really take me so much time. For other visits that I work on, sometimes it does take me a whole lot of time to clean the data and prepare it for the work. Yeah.
Fair enough. And another question from Emily. Do you come across any frustrations bringing Figma to work into Tableau?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So most of the time I have to go back to Figma. So it's almost like an iterative process. But I think with more practice. So this was my second design using Figma actually. So yeah, you sometimes have to go back. So I would see something. I don't know how to say something. I may have to resize. So if you see the slide I'm sharing, so I may have to resize like these tiny rectangles in there, or just move some things around. Like move the arrows. So sometimes I have to go back and forth. But it doesn't really take so much time to do that, to be honest. So that's why for me, it's always important that I try to sketch out what I want before I start designing in Tableau and before I start designing in Figma. Yeah.